I wanted to give a quick update on my book on gay marriage. So there are two parts that I want to talk about. The first part is what makes the book unique, and the second part is where it's at. So let's talk about the first part, what makes the book unique. There are a lot of books, as you probably know, talking about Christianity and same-sex relationships or gay marriage. And of course, they run the spectrum of opinion. Um, Typically, however, you get one of two views, either the view that Christians should maintain a quote unquote traditional prohibition view, or the argument that Christians should adopt a revisionist inclusivist view towards same sex relationships or gay marriage. You typically get one of those two options. My book is not really doing either one of those things. And that's what makes it somewhat distinct. Rather, what it is aiming to do is, by the way, my dog is scratching to get picked up as usual, so I'm probably going to just pause and pick him up. So this is, of course, Timbit. What he lacks in intellect, he more than makes up in terms of his ability to interrupt. Anyway, back to what we were talking about. What makes my book somewhat unique is that it doesn't focus on primarily arguing whether you should be affirming or non-affirming. Rather, it wants to argue that being affirming, that taking an affirming stance, is compatible with evangelical Christian identity. And the reason why that's an important position to argue, in my view, is because I know for a point of fact that in most Christian congregations, there are at least some people who are affirming. However, in many of those congregations, they are not safe to share their position of being affirming. And there are other people who may not be affirming, but nonetheless have questions, many questions about the whole debate. And again, they do not feel comfortable sharing those questions. The church is not a safe space because they feel if they raise questions, ask certain things, that they might be othered in the community, that they might be red flagged, that they might be stigmatized. So I wanted to write this book to say the evangelical church should be a safe space. And it should, one way to persuade people to make it a safe space is to explain why, in very defensible understanding of what it is to be evangelical, that one can be, in fact, same-sex affirming, affirming of same-sex relationships, and be evangelical. So that's what the book argues, and that's the unique space that it tries to carve out within this crowded field of discourse. Now, where the book is at, well, I started a book on this broad topic about 3 years ago. I ended up writing close to 200 pages on it and then shelved it, and it just didn't gel. And I've often found, I mean, for every book I've written, I've published 17 books over the years. For every one I've written, there's probably two that I have more than 100 pages into that just didn't go anywhere. And for the most part, that material just lies in the hinterland of a Google Drive or something. But in this case, I thought about reframing the approach and the argument I'm making. And so while I'm repurposing some of the material that I wrote a couple years ago, most of what I'm writing is new because it just has a new form of analysis. But that's where I'm at now. I've written probably 25,000 words. I anticipate the book will be about 40,000 words when I'm done. I think in terms of word count as an author. But for the typical layperson, you might think about a 150-page book when it's done. I hope to have the book done in mid-June or so. But judging by my schedule, I only have so much time to work on it. It may well be into the summer before I've completed the book. One other thing, I had a very interesting interview last week, which will be included within the book, or at least portions of it will be included. It was with a fellow named Randall Bach, and Randall Bach is with one of the representatives of the National Association of Evangelicals, which to my mind is like the preeminent evangelical Christian organization in the United States. And he was very gracious to agree to meet with me. And so we had a conversation about this, and I'll be using some of that material in the book. So I'm really looking forward to getting this book out. Probably, I'm willing to say that of all the books I've written, some of them there was no audience, to be honest, for the book. Because I tend to write things for which I have a passion and which I think are important and can make a difference. But that doesn't always mean there's a set audience. So, for example, when I wrote my book, Defending Atheism, Is the Atheist My Neighbor, 10 years ago now, actually came out in June of 2015, there was just no audience for that book. And I mean, I don't know, I've sold hundreds of copies, but yeah, not a lot of interest. There's just no audience for that book. And I've found more than a few times. I mean, my fundamentalist satire of apologetics, there's not an audience for that book. But I wrote it because I was interested in it and I enjoyed writing it. But I do think that there is a built-in audience for this book. I, of course, regularly hear about people, and even for all the books that have already been written, there are still so many people that find they have remaining questions. And I believe many of those questions are answered by the argument I want to make and the framework I want to present, which doesn't say you should believe one thing or another thing, but rather which says you should have the space to explore the questions. That to take a particular stance that is affirming on same-sex relationships does not betray any fundamental historic evangelical opinions. Even if it does run in to some current conceptions of what evangelicalism is, those conceptions are not as central to evangelical theological identity as what I'm going to argue is, which is compatible with the affirming perspective. So that's the book. Keep your eyes out for it. It should be out in June or July.